Okay, so in the previous video, I had talked about the English Civil War and how it would possibly tie it into Syracuse beating North Carolina and whatnot. I was wrong on thinking that, but not necessarily because they still are doing the Civil War, the English Civil War theme. It's actually involved in the Chester, Philadelphia train wreck as well. One thing really quick I want to point out though is I talked about William of Orange overthrowing King James II, and it was William of Orange, Syracuse Orange, and whatnot. One of the things I never realized is he actually died on 3/8 at the age of 51, and Syracuse was in their 38th NCAA tournament, and they also got their 38th tournament loss when they lost to North Carolina. The word death equals 38, UNC equals 38, and look, they even lost to North Carolina, who scored 83 points. So, I mean, I'm not going to talk about this post, but just wanted to point it out that the theme is actually still existent. Well, and like I said in the previous video, I wasn't quite sure of like what they were doing with it. And I think that it is actually foreshadowing the death of Queen Elizabeth and the rise of Prince Charles to be King Charles III, which I've mentioned for probably a year now. But anyway, I want to talk about the Chester, Philadelphia train wreck and how it connects to Virginia, also earthquakes, the English Civil War. I'll even throw in Happy Gilmore and Pope Francis. So anyway, we got the two Amtrak construction workers killed when the train strikes the backhoe that caused it to derail. It says there was 341 passengers on board. Instantly when I saw that, the first thing that I thought of was this Virginia Cavaliers coach who collapsed in the first game of the tournament. He collapsed with 34.1 seconds left in the half. But he was coaching Virginia, the Virginia Cavaliers. They were also playing Hampton, which is in Hampton, Virginia. Anyway, previously I had mentioned a whole bunch of 89 stuff with this. I thought maybe that the Spurs were going to lose their 35th home game against the Warriors to be 34-1, although that didn't happen, but that's what I had thought they were foreshadowing. It was right around that same time. But anyway, Virginia in Gematria equals 89, Virginia Cavaliers equal 89, King James equals 89, religion equals 89, and this train that derailed just so happened to be train number 89. When Tony Bennett collapsed, a lot of people thought it was this Tony Bennett, the famous singer for I Left My Heart in San Francisco. So interesting, that's the Warriors play in the San Francisco Bay Area. But this guy's 89 years old right now, even born on 8/3, or in other parts of the world they're rated as 3/8. Also, Queen Elizabeth is 89 years old right now, but she's turning 90 on April 21st. So, just something to think about. I talked about the Cavaliers being the supporters of King Charles in the English Civil War. If Queen Elizabeth dies, then her son, Prince Charles, will become King Charles III. So I just want to talk a very short summary of the history of the Catholic Church versus the Church of England and whatnot. So King Henry VIII wanted to get a divorce, and the Pope wouldn't let him. So he basically left the Catholic Church, and then they created the Church of England. So that's what, the two sides, the Catholic Church versus the Church of England. There's more to it than this, I'm just trying to summarize it, but, so he dies, then we have, like, Bloody Mary, a devout Catholic queen or whatever, killed a whole bunch of people who didn't agree with her. But then later we got King James, who created the King James Bible. So basically, it just kept the division coming. It was the Catholics versus the Church of England, or whatever you want to call it. And then when King James died, his son King Charles became the king, and he actually didn't even live there. So when he became the king, he brought his wife with him, who was a French Catholic, and a lot of people didn't like that. And a few other events led up to the English Civil War. King Charles was eventually executed. His sons, both King Charles II or whatever, was banished to France, and then his other son, James II, just left or whatever. So after King James I dies, Oliver Cromwell takes over. When Oliver Cromwell dies, King Charles II comes back to rule England again, like he was supposed to anyway. And then, even on his deathbed, he converted to Catholicism. Then, when he died, his brother James took over, so he was King James II, and he was the last king to be Catholic, and ever since, there's never been another Catholic king. And then he was overthrown by William of Orange. That's why I talked about the Syracuse Orange and whatnot. Well, what's interesting about him being William or whatever, King William, the next two people in line for king or ascension of the crowd or whatever in England right now are Prince Charles and Prince William. So if Prince Charles does become the king and then he dies, it will be King William after that, King William V, I believe. So all just going along with the old story. It's like they're just recreating the history. But anyway, really, just think about it for a second. I mean, all the division that they created, there's no doubt, like the gunpowder plot, I guarantee that was a hoax. We're just told that it was real, you know. I bet it didn't even really happen. That's just what they told you in history or whatever to code it. I even talked about the gunpowder plot and some of the numbers. I don't remember them offhand, but I know I made a video on it at some point in time. I mean, it's really obvious. The Catholic Church was worshiping the sun. King James, obviously a Freemason. I mean, there's absolutely no way that a lot of the things in the Bible aren't coded, especially when you got like Jesus, cross, and everything, gospel, Messiah, everything equals 74. I mean, the whole point of it was all planned, I guarantee. It was planned between the Catholic Church and the English rulers to create the division, just to get people to believe in the same idea but yet hate each other over it. And I mean, even to this day, we still see that. You have the people who absolutely want nothing other than the King James Bible, and then you have the Catholics who have no idea what's going on, but they just go along with it and whatnot, you know? So, I mean, that doesn't disprove God. It doesn't disprove a lot of things, but it does show that this division was created on purpose. So, moral of the story. Prince Charles equals 404 in Jewish gematria. Pope Francis equals 404 in Jewish gematria. Amtrak crash equals 404 in Jewish gematria. The King James Bible came out 404 years ago, supposedly on May 2nd, so it will be coming up on 405. There's also 404 verses in Revelation. So, I mean, we're getting really close to the end of the 404 years. I also want to point out that when Steve Kerr came back to the Warriors, they won their 44th game, and it gave them a 40-4 record, a lot like 404. The Warriors, originally from Philadelphia. Philadelphia comes from the book of Revelation. Even if you write out Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in Jewish gematria, it equals 1611, 404 years ago, the year that the King James Bible came out. So basically the whole point of me re-explaining a little bit of this is just to show the significance and how it ties into the royal family and also Pope Francis, the Catholics of the Church of England. And no coincidence that they add up to the same thing. It's Charles from the English Civil War. The guy who finally defeats them is William, and William would be the next king. I mean, no coincidence. No way. Also, Pope Francis's 1189th day as Pope. If you include the end date, it comes 44 days after the 405th anniversary of the King James Bible. Remember in Mark Twain's last writing, it was called The Mysterious Stranger. In that book, Satan's name is the number. It's 44. Mysterious Stranger equals 266 in gematria. 9:23, the day that Pope Francis went to the White House at 9:23 a.m. He came to America the day before on his 923rd day as Pope. But anyway, 9:23 is the 266th day. Pope Francis, the 266th Pope. If you write out Philadelphia Amtrak derailment, it equals 266. It also equals 131. Prince Charles in simple gematria equals 131. If you write out the word 131, it equals 107. King Charles equals 107. The 1189th day, that's in regards to the amount of chapters in the King James Bible. But Pope Francis's day is June 14th or 14/6. This was the Palmetto Amtrak that equals 166. The 166th day is June 14th. It's also 1 month, 13 days. The amount of people that were on there, the passengers, 341. That equals 113, just like Michael Jordan, just like Kobe Bryant. Steph Curry also wears number 30. The 30th prime is 113. I believe also Amtrak crash equals 113. But it just sticks out with the UNC game tonight versus Villanova. Villanova is right next to where Kobe Bryant played basketball in high school. North Carolina is where Michael Jordan went. So it's almost like a Jordan versus Kobe before they went to the NBA theme or whatever. I also noticed 341, it's the mirror of 143. See, the mirror is 143, 143. And that number has just been a really big number connected to earthquakes and a few other things. The 143rd day this year is 522. Antonin Scalia or whatever, Scalia in Jewish gematria equals 522. He died 522 weeks after Dick Cheney shot his lawyer Fred. Scalia was even quail hunting the day before, just like Cheney and whatnot. Also, the Joplin, Missouri tornado that a lot of people remember happened on 522. It even went over I-44. Earlier this year, we had Braden Joplin, died on Interstate 80. He was a Ben Carson staffer. There's a whole bunch more to it. I have a post on that as well, but it came down to Johnny Carson and whatnot. Johnny Carson's last episode was on 522, 19 years before the Joplin, Missouri tornado. Then the Cleveland Cavaliers coach was fired after coaching 143 games. His birthday's even on 522 this year. He was fired 122 days before his birthday on 122. That was also the same day that Steve Kerr came back. Anyway, I also noticed the train locomotive number was 627. Just kind of weird. I really don't know what it means, but I made this post just yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago about Obama talking about Donald Trump's comments, or nuclear comments or whatever, and they showed that it was at 627. So just wanted to point that out. Maybe we'll start seeing 627 a lot more. I know 627 is the day that Kanye West got up on stage in Glastonbury and sung the Queen song. It's the day after gay marriage was legalized. Queen, the gay band, Freddie Mercury, tons of other stuff that tied into Freddie Gray, but he sung Mama, I Just Killed a Man, and whatnot. I don't know if he's talking about the Pope, Obama, Trump, or whatever, but just interesting he sung Mama, I Just Killed a Man. And I made a whole nother video on that. I just cannot remember it all. There's a whole lot to it. Anyway, maybe I'll link a thing to the playlist of all the Kanye stuff. It even ties into the Paris attacks and whatnot. But the past few months in sports championships has all involved the year 1985. The Kansas City Royals won the World Series. They also won in 1985 on October 27th. The same day that Back to the Future ends, when Marty McFly on his Toyota 4x4 even has KC on the front of it. They're called KC Daylighters on the grill. The World Series began on October 27th, which is also Philadelphia's 333rd year anniversary in 2015. The Super Bowl was all about the 85 Bears. The Panthers even had the same record as them and whatnot. Also, in the opening scene of the very first Back to the Future movie, they have all the clocks, and Doc Brown even has a Broncos clock. I mean, just really strange. He has a Broncos clock. Now we have Villanova making the NCAA championship game, and the last time that they won was in 1985. What are the odds of that? I mean, ridiculous. 1985, also an interesting year. Chris Mullin was the top scorer in the tournament. Chris Mullin, famous for being a Golden State Warrior. Villanova beat Georgetown, heavily favored Georgetown. I can't remember what that is. Most valuable player basically was Ed Pinckney of Villanova. I mean, Pinckney, a super interesting name in regards to 6/26 last year, the day gay marriage was legalized, and Obama sang Amazing Grace at Clementa Pinckney's funeral. Of course, this guy, Ed Pinckney, also went on to play for the Philadelphia 76ers. He played with them in 1995-96 season. That was the same year that the Chicago Bulls were 72-10. This year's been all about that. The Warriors chasing the 72-10 Bulls. I mean, oh, the odds. Villanova, like I said, also close to where Kobe Bryant went to high school. Another thing that really stuck out to me about Villanova, and they beat Georgetown. It was Patrick Ewing's final year at Georgetown. Patrick Ewing and Allen Iverson are the only two players to be drafted the first pick in the draft out of Georgetown. Patrick Ewing even coaches associate head coach of the Charlotte Hornets right now. Michael Jordan owns the Charlotte Hornets. He played for North Carolina. Interesting, Patrick Ewing even born on 8/5, a number I'll mention later, but just like 85, 1985. And of course, Allen Iverson, super connected to Philadelphia. Like I said, I made a huge 6-part video on Allen Iverson being surrounded with the number 56. In Philadelphia, Philadelphia, the Declaration of Independence was even signed there by 56 signers, the first being John Hancock, who even died at the age of 56. Much more 56 connected to Philadelphia. It's also crazy that I've been following Michael Jordan since 2015 last year in the All-Star Week. Zach LaVine did the Space Jam dunk. It was one of the things I talked about how I thought the Warriors were going to win the championship last year because it was all connected to Space Jam. The Warriors had a number 23 on their team, but they didn't have anybody who wore number 0. The Cavs had LeBron, but they also had Kevin Love, who was number 0. The Monstars were number 0. So who knows? I made that prediction a long time before the finals happened, and the Warriors still won. And I barely even knew any gematria at the time. The gematria only backed up my theory even more, because it was 122 days after Valentine's that the Warriors won. Golden State even equals 122 in gematria. Anyway, Zach LaVine, the slam dunk winner, was the Teen Wolf last year. Kevin Love, he went to UCLA. Kevin Love went to UCLA. Russell Westbrook also went to UCLA. Russell Westbrook was the MVP of the All-Star game. These two guys both won back-to-back this year. Anyway, the movie Teen Wolf has a whole bunch of Nebraska Cornhusker stuff in the background. When he turns into the wolf, he even joins the school play about the Civil War. And I talked about how it connected to the Nebraska Cornhuskers of this year and whatnot. Tons of stuff with it, but Nebraska had a terrible record, and then somehow they even got to play in a bowl game. And guess what? They played UCLA, and they played at the Foster Farms Bowl. Foster Farms Bowl in Levi's Stadium, where the Super Bowl was. Nebraska's new coach was even Mike Riley, who formerly coached the Oregon State Beavers. The mascot in the movie Teen Wolf came from the Oregon State Beavers. I followed Michael Jordan for a very long time. I don't know why I haven't really been keeping up on Michael Jordan as much as I had before. They were just putting out pointless article after pointless article in regards to Michael Jordan. But anyway, as I researched back, I found out that Philadelphia used to be the capital of the country Jordan until the year 106 AD, and then it was later destroyed by earthquakes. The Philadelphia train wreck last year was engine number 601. It wrecked when it was going 106 miles an hour. 10/6 on the Gregorian calendar is also the same as 9/23 on the Julian calendar. Also, the word prophecy equals 106. So just the Jordan connection to Philadelphia, also to earthquakes. Anyway, in the game, the Virginia Cavaliers game that I talked about in the very beginning, the coach Tony Bennett collapsed. He collapsed against Hampton. Hampton University is in Hampton, Virginia. Allen Iverson just so happens to be from Hampton, Virginia. What are the odds of that? Even I talked about him and Patrick Ewing being the #1 pick in the draft. The 76ers this year even have a good chance of getting the #1 overall pick. So something to point out. Also want to point out Doug Collins is the only other first overall pick that the 76ers have ever had. He was born in 1951. He was also on the 1972 Olympic team where the Soviets beat them 51-50. Tons of stuff with 51 as well. The 44th day of the year this year had a date numerology of 51. The word earthquake, the small way equals 44. I'll try to mention that in a little bit, but Doug Collins was even on the Lakers versus the Timberwolves game, the first game of the season this year, and he even talked about how the NBA was a fraternity and a brotherhood and whatnot. I put it in some video a while back. So like I said, I haven't completely figured out the English Civil War theme, but whatever, I'm on the right track. Tony Bennett was a Virginia Cavalier coach, blah, 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 he collapsed. One of the biggest things I forgot was that King Charles equals 107, King James II equals 107, but also Earthquake the Big Way equals 107. So, interesting, he ties into earthquakes as well. And then on January 15th this year, or also 15/1, a lot like the 1551 mirrors, we had the death of the guy, the Grizzly Adams actor who died. Can't think of his name right now. I know his name adds up to 56 at Gematria. But I made a post about Happy Gilmore and how it connected to Philadelphia and earthquakes and whatnot. Notice this guy died, the Grizzly Adams actor, he died 79 days before April 3rd. The word champion equals 79. It also just so happened to be 2 months, 19 days. I've talked a whole bunch about 219 in regards to the Golden State Warriors winning this year. Back-to-back championships equals 219. More to it than that. Pope Francis also turned 79 years old on December 17th of last year, 2015. And also this train wreck today, or yesterday, it hit a backhoe. Backhoe equals 79 in Jewish gematria. Also, just the word Chester, it was in Chester, Pennsylvania. I can't help but think of Chester Arthur, who was the president after James Garfield was assassinated. He was shot at a train station, and then he died 79 days later. Chester Arthur, the guy who replaced him, his name equals 65, like Philadelphia the small way. If you write 79, it has identical gematria to earthquake, 107/44. If you write out 79, it equals 152, just like Pennsylvania, just like Edward Pinkney, the most valuable player in the 1985 Villanova win. If you write out the word 36, it equals 152. When Tony Bennett collapsed, he came back in the second half, and they won by 36 points. Some other interesting 152s. Easter Sunday equals 152. Let the games begin. That's what Bane says right before he blows up the stadium. And Batman, Book of Mormon, Gregorian calendar, Power of Love, Back to the Future, whatnot. Trump Berry I wrote in here because that was Donald Trump's Judge sister. There's been the Judge theme. Her last name was Trump Berry. So just interesting, it's 152 as well. In the movie Happy Gilmore, though, after Chubbs dies, Shooter McGavin tells Happy he's going to dedicate his game to Chubbs or whatever, and then Happy gets mad. And he says the whole line that doesn't make any sense, that Grizzly Adams did have a beard. Or he says, yeah, Grizzly Adams had a beard, and the other guy goes, Grizzly Adams did have a beard. And it really is pretty pointless to the whole movie. But the guy who plays Chubbs is Carl Weathers. He's also the guy who played Apollo Creed on Rocky. Rocky, the movie's in Philadelphia. This year, on February 26th, we even had the death of the guy who trained Rocky in the movie, Tony Burton. His name was Duke Evers on Rocky. We just had the death of Patty Duke. Last year, right around the time that the Duke Blue Devils won it was actually the same day that the Duke Blue Devils won the Final Four tournament. Sheriff Roscoe from the Dukes of Hazzard died. Also want to point out Duke means a male leader. So something to think about, all the death of dukes. Also, the Democratic National Convention is in July. It's in Philadelphia. So it could be a time to watch out for a political assassination. Don't know if that's going to happen. Just want to point it out that I actually know that Democrats and political people will be in Philadelphia that day. Or actually days, but Apollo Creed, in the movie, he dies on August 31st, 1985. That adds up to 143. Just the mirror of the 341. It was exactly 99 years before the worst East Coast earthquake ever. That was on 8/31 of 1886, which also has a date numerology of 143. That earthquake was in Charleston. It was 58 years and 5 days before the next worst East Coast earthquake in 1944, and that was a 5.8. Then in 2011, we had another 5.8. It was in Mineral, Virginia, but they also had stories about how people felt it in Philadelphia. Mineral, Virginia, just another connection to Virginia. Virginia Cavaliers, Mineral, Virginia. Seismograph equals 58. The study of seismology goes back to 585 BC. And Thales, Richter scale equals 58. The guy who invented it, Charles Richter, died at age 85 in the year 85. The big one equals 85. And Back to the Future, Donald Trump, or Biff, not Donald Trump, but Biff wins all of his money on the 85th day of the year in 1958. Tons of other 85, 58 references all throughout that movie. Anyway, Happy Gilmore learns how to putt on the Earthquake golf course. And it just so happens to be 131 minutes into the movie. 131 equals 107. Earthquake equals 107. The building that falls has the black cube on the top, just like the 58-story Comcast Center that's in Philadelphia. I talked about how no other buildings that I could find in skyscrapers looked like that building. It completely looks, other than the little antenna, it looks like the Comcast Center in Philadelphia. But we've had Virginia Cavaliers. Happy Gilmore's girlfriend in this movie is Virginia Vennet. VV equals 44 like Earthquake. Even played by Julie Bowen, who equals 44. The capital of Jordan was destroyed by earthquakes when it was called Philadelphia. I also mentioned Apollo Creed dying 99 years after the worst East Coast earthquake ever. Adam Sandler was born on 9/9. Queen Elizabeth became the longest reigning monarch ever. English, British, whatever monarch, on 9/9 of 2015. Which also, Gregorian to Julian, also just so happens to be 9/22, the same day Pope Francis arrived in the United States. At 4:04 p.m. In Happy Gilmore, they even have the scene where he's meet me at the 9th green at 9, the 99. I made a whole bunch of posts about 99 and 44. Interesting if you include the end date, the day that Obama sang Amazing Grace at Clementa Pinckney's funeral, to the day of this train wreck is a span of 9 months and 9 days. He's also the 43rd president to 4-3. It was, when he sang Amazing Grace, it was 9 days after 9 people got shot. The first president to die in office was the 9th president. Obama would be the 9th president to die in office. Also, 9 presidents after JFK. Abraham Lincoln was shot and died 9 hours and 9 minutes after being shot. So I also thought it was interesting that this train derailment comes one day after Villanova defeats Oklahoma by 44, and Oklahoma only scores 51 points. I mean, a lot of other interesting things. Houston equals 51 and whatnot. We've been talking all about the 44. Today is 4-4. It's the day that the championship game is and whatnot. But remember, on the 44th day of the year, Oklahoma had the 5.1 earthquake. The date numerology was even 51 that day, the 44th day, a 5.1 earthquake in Oklahoma, and then they lose by 51. It also just so happened to be, if you include the end date, 51 days before the train derailment in Chester. Also, in regards to Virginia, once again, way back on this fake Bridgeport shooting or Roanoke shooting, there's a ton of 58 stuff. Allison Parker, Bridgewater, Vester L. Flanagan. He's even from San Francisco, like the Warriors. But they put this picture up. This is like their main picture that they had. And they have this right here, Franklin County, Bridgewater Plaza. If you read it down, it says Franklin Bridge, the Ben Franklin Bridge that's in Philadelphia. They even show you on the very bottom here, the NASCAR guy who wrecked in Pennsylvania that same day, or the day before or something. Regardless, they have this headline at the bottom where they show you this picture. They're letting you know to think about Pennsylvania, and then they show you Franklin Bridge. I talked a lot about the Franklin Bridge maybe collapsing or something to do with that in regards to an earthquake. But moral of the story, it's just another connection to Virginia, to Philadelphia. Also, the original CNN article on this Amtrak wreck, they gave us this little thing here. It's the tweet that Amtrak sent out at 8:12 a.m. on 4/3 with 43 favorites, 176 retweets. Back to the Future equals 176. November 13th, 2015, the day of the Paris attacks, equals 176. Hampton, Virginia, the team that I talked about at the very beginning, equals 176. Even 1952 is 176 years after 1776. Queen Elizabeth became the queen this year. It was actually only 175 days because she became queen before July 4th, or 175 years. But still interesting, that year was 176 years after that. 88 plus 88 is even 176. And also, I left a link here on the blog. Maybe I'll put one in the description as well. But the 8/12 just sticks out again. I talked about this date a while back, August 12th. A super significant day. Lots of 71 and 44 and 21 in regards to this date. The guy who founded Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, his name in gematria, William Penn, equals 128. A lot like 1208 and 8/12. If you do it as a date, it would be 12/8, December 8th, or August 12th. Anyway, William Penn, he was a Cavalier, and he got the land on a charter from Charles II. Pennsylvania even became a state on 12/12/1787, a date numerology of 128. Chester, Pennsylvania is also the original landing point of William Penn in America. Interesting too, he also acquired the land on 3/4/1681. 3443, April 3rd can be written as 34 or 43. 34 also a super important number in regards to freeing the slaves in the Civil War. Interesting, this was in 1681, the year of 1861, the year that the United States Civil War began. Tons of 34 with it. Kansas even became the 34th and last state to join the Union before the war, and we just had that Kansas train derailment going to Chicago 20 days before this one. I also just talked about the Cavs, how they scored 120 points on the Kings and the Lakers, and they played them like right after another. They scored 120 points in every one of them games. If you write out 120, it equals 80, just like King Charles III. Also, Moses died at the age of 120, Moses from the Bible. Just reminds me that there was an earthquake right before he went up on top of Mount Sinai. There was an earthquake in the Bible, it says. So interesting he dies, and they give us this video here of 120. This was the first video that I saw, too, on any of the articles that I looked at. Or at least the first video I believe that CNN gave us. Last year's Philadelphia train wreck, there was also the big aftershock of the Nepal earthquake. The one that killed 9,000 people and injured 23,000, the 923. This Philadelphia train wreck last year happened at 9:23 p.m. even. If you write out Nepal earthquake in gematria, it equals 65, just like Philadelphia the small way. Funny too, right around the time of the Freddie Gray death, they kept showing the movie Hairspray on TV all the time. I never seen it before and I watched it. The opening scene was, "We love you, Baltimore," and whatnot. Totally ties into Freddie Gray. And she goes into the classroom, and that even has Nepal up on the chalkboard or whatever. And then we get a Nepal earthquake 6 days after Freddie Gray dies and whatnot. Just ridiculous. There was also 2 other Amtrak derailments yesterday. One in Illinois at 3:04 on 4-3. I mean, if you write out the town that it was in, Somonauk, it equals 109. If you write out Somonauk, Illinois, it equals 208. If you write out Philadelphia earthquake, it equals 109, also 208. The guy who invented the Richter scale, his full name, Charles Francis Richter, even equals 109. Los Angeles equals 109, and so does Omaha, Nebraska, so something to think about. I talked about Obama giving a speech at Baxter Arena, which equals 109. That's in Omaha, Nebraska. It was like the day after he gave his State of the Union speech, I believe. Have to go back and look at it, but just wanted to point that out. Some other interesting 208s as well. Southern California, known for earthquakes, equals 208. The Great Depression, English Reformation. The other place was Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Just notice in this video, they give you the 1 minute 47 seconds, which is also 107 seconds. Earthquake equals 107 the big way. Also, Bucks County, Pennsylvania equals 306 in gematria. The 306 prime number is 2017. A lot like next year, so maybe it's all foreshadowing something, an earthquake, a big earthquake for next year. Or who knows, just wanted to point that out real quick. It also says the Palmetto train is an 820-mile track or whatever. 829 is the 145th prime. Chicago, Illinois equals 145. The Kansas Amtrak derailment was going to Chicago. I also can't help but think of the one children's song, "Engine, engine number 9, going down Chicago line. If the train falls off the tracks, do you want your money back?" Engine, engine number 9 equals 223 in gematria. Just thought it was interesting that it's going down Chicago line, and if the train falls off the track, I also, last weekend, or I think it was, or a couple weeks ago, I don't remember, but I went and we watched the new movie Allegiant. It's in the Divergent series or whatever. I don't even know if I've even seen them all, but that whole movie was about a civil war that's going to happen in Chicago, and they're being controlled by an elite person, and most of the people in Chicago don't know who they're being controlled by, but they're just going along with it, and yada, yada, yada. It's exactly like what has been going on in our world for years. It's just funny how they tell you the truth in movies, and most people just dismiss it and don't even get it. So anyway, they leave that place to go back and try to stop the Civil War and save Chicago. I just seen an article the other day about how it's going to be a long summer for Chicago, and this lady's kid was murdered or something. I was going to make a video on it or a post, and then I forgot. Now I can't even find the article. And then, of course, we've had all the Chicago stuff in sports with the Bears and the Bulls. Also, the Cubs haven't won a World Series in 107 years. And they were supposed to win it from Back to the Future last year. So it ties back into Back to the Future again. Also, this one last thing here I put in here was that Steph Curry, they showed in the game last night when they beat the Trailblazers that Steph Curry is averaging 34.1 minutes per game. Why they would put that stat up, I mean, because they're trying to do the whole he needs rest or whatever going into the playoffs and blah, blah, blah. So they put that stat up at 34.1 on the same day that 341 people are on an Amtrak that derails. So who knows? Sorry the video's so long, and there's probably more to add, which is sad, but I just wanted to point out a lot of this earthquake stuff. I talked about the English Civil War, but I forgot that King Charles and whatnot also connects to the earthquake stuff. And I don't know, they've just been foreshadowing a lot of stuff for earthquakes or destruction and whatnot, so I guess we'll wait and see, but just wanted to point it out. Have a good one.